Welcome to the Fully Mindful podcast. I'm your host, Melissa. I designed this podcast for you. I'm so happy you're here. We are talking about what it means to live with more intention, creativity, and authenticity so we can make aligned connections. I'm a neurodivergent lawyer turned coach who found the healing power of breathwork and the powerful impact of mindfulness as we navigate this wild and beautiful ride of life. Here at The Fully Mindful, we dive deep with inspiring guests, share solo minisodes that are packed with tools you can apply immediately, and I mix it up a bit with tangents and sidebars where my friend and host of the New World Normal podcast, Debbie Harrell, joins us for some down-to-earth, sometimes random, but always meaningful conversations. If you're ready to breathe, reflect, and grow, you're in the right place. Let's get fully mindful. Hey everyone, Melissa here, and welcome to this special mini-sode of the Fully Mindful. I'm glad you're here. Today I want to share something a little more personal and invite you into the heart of this next chapter of the podcast. We're beginning a new series, one that explores neurodivergence and learning differences and addiction, and often overlooked but powerful ways in which sometimes neurodivergence, learning differences, and addiction overlap. And I'm not approaching this as a coach or a mindfulness teacher, really. I'm coming at it as someone who's lived it. I was diagnosed, as many of you know, with ADHD as a child, but like many girls at the time, there was little understanding or meaningful support. It became a label, not a lifeline. I was smart and sensitive, I now see, and maybe a bit imaginative and sometimes intense, and also often overwhelmed by what was going on in my nervous system and how differently I learned. So I learned to withdraw. I did build a vivid inner world, and on the outside, I masked pretty hard. I became, I'm not sure I was the easy kid, but I was definitely the achieving kid, the one who just had to do it all. I worked hard to make sure that no one saw the mess underneath. But the internal pressure of being the kid who actually learned very differently and regulated very differently, that pressure just didn't vanish. It built, and eventually it broke through. And as I moved into my teens and then later into my early 20s, that quiet masking kind of turned a little rebellious, or maybe a lot rebellious. I started running from expectations, from relationships, from myself. I drank hard. I lived fast. I tried to write and roam like my hero at the time, Jack Kerouac. I, needless to say, romanticized the chaos, trying to feel free, really. But eventually I found myself back at the start, maybe even behind. No book, no real direction, no peace. So I did what I thought I was supposed to do, and I buckled down. I went off to college, to a really good college, and I got lucky. I met the man who would become my husband these last 30 years. I found love, and for the first time, a sense of stability. I'm sure he didn't feel that way, but I did feel that way. But even then, I was definitely still caught in alcohol abuse, and I was still using it to manage what felt unmanageable. And that's really when the next chapter began, overachievement. Yeah, a lot of overachievement. And even after I got sober, which I'm so grateful for, and which saved my life, I stayed in the cycle of proving myself. I performed, I produced, and still I felt like I wasn't quite whole. I went to law school, I became a lawyer, I was doing the deal. But I was chaos inside. And that was even though I was practicing mindfulness. I mean, I was even trying to like overachieve mindfulness, if that's a thing. It wasn't really until I finally came to terms with what it meant to live with ADHD that things really began to shift. And I stopped trying to fix myself totally. And I started trying to understand myself and why I was having such difficulty when everybody else seemed to be, not having difficulty. And that's not to say that everything's been perfect since those early days of coming to terms with my ADHD, my neurodivergence. There are days where I still struggle for sure, despite decades of mindfulness and many years of breath work and self-help and therapy and running and all the things. There are days when I still feel like I'm too much and at the same time, not enough. Days where there's a gaping hole inside and I wonder, is this all there is? Am I slipping back? What's going on? But now I don't fall quite as hard in the way that I used to. And I definitely don't stay there as long because now I have connection to my breath, to my body, to myself, to others, to something greater than myself. And that's what this series is hopefully going to get to. You're going to hear from people with lived experience like myself. You're going to hear from those who walk alongside others in their journeys of healing and growth. You're going to hear from an educator with dyslexia who, as a second grader, was told by her teacher she'd never amount to anything. Like, who would do that, right? And who is now a fierce advocate for the kids in her own second grade classroom who learn differently, as well as her own children. You're going to hear from a psychologist who specializes in identifying learning and thinking differences in children and teens and helps them and their families understand, navigate, and thrive. You're going to hear from a lawyer who's walked through addiction and recovery and who now lives and works in full alignment with her true self, teaching yoga, living mindfully, embracing sobriety. You will also hear from a woman thriving with decades of sobriety and 12-step recovery, who shares how community and connection sustained her through some of the more difficult times. And you'll hear from a therapist who works at the powerful intersection of neurodivergence and recovery from addiction, helping clients reclaim their wholeness and thrive, not just survive. And that's just the beginning, because after this series, we'll be diving even deeper with conversations that explore how we move from diagnosis and sobriety into authentic living. And you're going to hear from an author who offers a practical, compassionate framework for thriving, not just functioning, as well as one of my favorite conversations with a breathwork and spiritual teacher who helps us connect more deeply with ourselves, each other, and the world around us in a really meaningful way. This season is about recovery, yes, but also about reclamation, reclaiming our creativity, our sensitivity, our truth, reclaiming connection, meaning, and purpose, and helping those we love reclaim theirs. So whether you're navigating neurodivergence, addiction, a learning difference, or all of the above, whether you love someone who is, or you're just starting to ask questions, you're not alone. You're not too much, and you're not broken, and they're not broken. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you'd like to hear more of my personal story, I will link a longer minisode where I go deeper into my journey in case you're interested, and you can always reach out. I'm happy to talk about my recovery from alcohol addiction, my recovery within ADHD, and my mindfulness and breathwork practices. You're not alone. Reach out. I'm here. We've got a lot to explore together, so let's begin. Thank you for joining me on the Fully Mindful podcast. If you got value from this episode, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share this episode with someone who loved this content too. Remember, small moments of mindfulness can lead to big changes in your day-to-day life. Until next time, take a deep breath, stay present, and tap into your own mindfulness. I'll see you next week.